TRAI, the regulator for all telecom operators in India, is asking them to set up a digital platform for customers' consent to curb all sorts of promotional calls and ask customers whether they want to receive those calls or not. So, Krishna, what we are understanding is there's going to be one central platform where customers will be sent a one-time message asking them whether they want a credit card call, a debit card call, a call from banks, to call from retail customers and retail shops. And when they say yes or a no, depending on which, their names are going to be in that directory. And if they say no, they should not be receiving those pesky calls anymore. Is that correct?
Right. So it's going to begin with customer consent, and there's going to be a unified digital interface as well, a platform, unified digital platform. That's what this entire thing is all. But there has never been one before, Shweta, prior to this. And now there's just exactly 2 months' time for telecom operators to set up this in a platform, digital platform that the TRAI, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, the Telecom Regulator of India, has now given the directive to telecom companies to set up, and that will begin. It will essentially get consumers' consent, and will also keep asking for consumer consent at every level. Not like they gave consent one day and then it's over. They need to seek, maintain, and revoke.
Right.
Consumers' consent, depending upon when they want to give it and when they want to take it back. And this is called the Digital Consent Acquisition Facility, the DCA. And it will begin. Phase one is all about, first you ask the customer, the consumer, whether they are giving the consent for getting promotional messages or not. The question is not even thrown to the telecom companies. It is not even thrown to any other principal entities, insurance companies, finance companies, none of them. The consumer first decides, and of course, all these numbers are listed numbers, registered numbers, unregistered numbers. So this is sort of like the final crackdown, if I may, the beginning of the final crackdown, because we have a deadline on this. 2 months from now, we will need to see what this digital consent acquisition or DCA facility is looking like. Now, even before that, there's a common short code starting with 127 for sending consent-seeking messages, and then the TRA has asked telecom companies to use this 127 short code for getting consent from the consumer. So, no means no is becoming more and more clear as far as pesky telemarketing and phone calls are concerned, Shweta.
Okay, interesting. I think the operative word here is consent, Krishna. And I want to understand from you, before I bring in Amit and Abhijit into this, when consent is asked, whether it's going to be asked periodically or there's going to be a one-time consent and then you can revoke it as and when you like. How does that work out?
Right. So we don't know the finalities of how this whole thing is going to work out finally. Okay. But what is happening right now, what we need to keep in mind is that this has been spoken about for a very long time, this digital consent acquisition facility. There was, this was an idea that was mooted before, et cetera, et cetera. The fact of the matter is that despite everything, despite even Truecaller apps on our phones, we're still getting these, pesky telemarketing phone calls. In fact, Shweta, what's happening now with some of these people whose numbers have already been found out as spam numbers, they're calling from their personal numbers. Some of these telemarketers are now calling from their personal numbers so that your phone can't track them. That's where things have reached, because they've got deadlines to catch up with. They've got, things that they have to give their superiors as to making so many calls and making so many cells. So they are now resorting to all kinds of measures to do telemarketing, and it's a very dangerous situation over here where it's the entire pesky telemarketing, messages and phone calls are getting uncontrollable despite new technology coming in, despite an app specifically being there to screen calls and et cetera, et cetera. So.
All right, I think we seem to have lost Krishna there, but very interesting. A facility, a digital facility, only to track people who've given consent to getting these promotional calls. If they say no, they are not likely to get those calls and pesky messages. And this is a problem each of us face. Amit, this is a daily problem, from marketing, telemarketing calls to, banking calls, and all of which we have not really signed up for. So it looks like there is a deadline now, which is all the more important, because at least if that deadline is met, there could be an end to this menace.
Yeah, the operative word is if that deadline is met, and that's going to be a very difficult task. You must remember the service providers, as Krishna was saying, are already giving you certain services where you can block calls, but it doesn't happen. So it's going to be a very huge algorithmic or technical sort of exercise. And I hope that that happens, because if that happens, and if it does, if we do get to a place where these calls are stopped, it's going to be a big achievement even for the TRAI, leave aside the service providers, and of course consumers are will be only too happy about it.
Okay, consumers will only be too
But
happy.
like, let me repeat, it's going to be a humongous task
Absolutely.
to basically achieve it.
Right, and in fact, from what I'm reading at the moment, considering the volume of the work that is involved, TRAI has in fact allocated 2 months, as Krishna was pointing out, to develop such a facility by allowing providers to implement this in a phased manner. Let me bring in Avijit at this point in time. Avijit, are you of the view that this is going to be a humongous task, as Amit is pointing out and Krishna alluded to? This is going to be in a phased manner. This cannot be done overnight, but this is something that, you know, it's a and let me put it this way, I see this as a two-faced problem. One, where your data is easily available to all these telemarketing agencies, to these people who are hoping to acquire you as a customer, and on the other hand, the inability of service providers to put a stop to this. So while, you know, on the first problem, there seems to have been a little to no relief, on the second problem, TRAI has at least set a deadline saying you come up with a facility, a digital facility, you take consent, and if there's no consent given, then kindly stop bothering customers.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. One is there couldn't have been a more appropriate step in the right direction. This is one. But the point that you harped on, it's going to be a humongous task. Absolutely. In fact, I think 2 months is too short a time, and there has to be extensions for this. That I'm pretty sure of. But I have a slightly, different thing, a question rather, as to see, we are all bothered with pesky calls. I mean, there is nobody who will welcome these calls. But I will perhaps, also want to know most of these companies who employ these sort of telemarketers, and we know there are everybody. I mean, from flimsy services to very real services like banking and automobile selling, whatever. There are all marketers, they employ these sort of telemarketing agents. Now, how many of these calls, or what fraction of their attempts do actually turn into sales? This I am very interested to know. Perhaps it can be a more elaborate study to find out the quantum or fraction of these calls that turns into actually sales. Because I'm sure if it does, all these companies, they know whether and how much of these effort actually translates into sales. They are not going to let off their sales so easily. So on the one hand, even if this system is put in place, you might get fewer phone calls, but I'm sure you will be receiving a far bigger volume of SMS messages or WhatsApp messages, because all these data is already with them. I don't think if they are prohibited from calling, they'll also be prohibited from messaging. So soon your mailbox will be full, absolutely full of messages, thousands of them, which you will be continuously deleting. Believe me, in my phone, I have the number of blocked numbers is perhaps more than the number of contacts that I have. So this is actually what we end up with. So I'm not sure whether we will perhaps see the end of one avatar. Perhaps it will emerge as a new avatar.
Okay. And Krishna, it's not like the consent was not sought before this, but consent was sought individually by all these telemarketing agencies, as you were pointing out. But these were individual, entities who were seeking consent. There was no central register, and the move to have a central entity sort of, it makes it easier for telecom operators to track who are the customers that have agreed to get a call and who are the customers who really don't want to get a call.
And therein lies the conundrum, Shweta, that I think that's there in all three of our minds, Abhijit, yours and mine. Who are these people who are going to say yes? The question. I want to know
who says yes.
I thought a crackdown meant they just say don't bother them. There is enough and more advertising. There's digital advertising. There's so much free internet. There's so many ways in which you can promote your product. The last way, I don't know who's happy, who says, oh, that's the financial product you're telling me about. I totally want to buy this from this complete stranger who's telling me this on the phone. and I'm going to invest my money because of it. I'm going to buy an insurance policy like this. I'm going to buy a financial product like this. Who are these people who say these things, Shweta? I'm curious to know. I really, and then, okay, the other problem is, or rather, the other interesting part is they talk about only whitelisted numbers to be allowed, which means that there is going to be this white list of people who are allowed to call you and sell you things. Abhijit, would you be okay with that? I mean, just out of curiosity.
I won't.
No. So,
And
Shweta,
Krishna, this list will vary from individual to individual.
Absolutely.
True. So what is so? Anyways, away from the conundrum, maybe deep down inside we do like certain products and we want to be told about it. And certain genre of products. Maybe insurance is not what you want to buy on the phone, but maybe other promotional things that you're okay with. You wouldn't know. Even real estate, some people might want to know on the phone, and some new interesting real estate project is coming up. You never know. So the idea is that the white list is going to come up, and the more, as Avijit is telling us, and the white list is going to be different for different people. And more importantly, I think that there'll be one central white list which will be approved, from where a consumer can say yes or no. Say, for example, 100 names are part of that white list who are supposed to, who are allowed to promote products and services to you. Then out of the 100, you might give your consent for 10 or 20 of them, just as an example. So, and more importantly, Shweta, that consent is not once in a lifetime agreement. That consent changes. So it'll be interesting to see how they, continue to maintain that consent process. Because if you see that problem happening with, in Apple phones, or when you download apps, you have this long list of things, terms and conditions that you're supposed to say okay to in a jiffy, and that's it. That's the end of it. And I really hope that, more calibrated ways of getting consent and maintaining consent is done as far as this digital consent acquisition facility is concerned.
Okay, interesting there. Amit, you wanted to come in at some point.
No, Krishna has alluded to that you have to, how do you keep updating it, this list? So every time you use your phone, your number is out there one more time. So you have a list today, tomorrow you use your phone to purchase something, your number is out there with another set of people. So basically updating this list will be another challenge. And so let's see, 2 months is not too far away.
2 months is not too far, of course, and a central digital consent acquisition means that it is going to be a yes or a no from a customer who wants to get those marketing calls or not. We'll of course have to wait and watch out for when that gets implemented. There's a deadline there of 2 months, and a close one at that. We will come back on that story.